Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. And we are live coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas, and on all of our social media and on the radio at 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. Man, it's just been a day. It's been a day, and it's probably going to take me a minute to just kind of get my thoughts together. Um, we've been busy since 7:30 this morning. We saw lots of people at the Rock. It's been a fantastic day for chiropractic, but we just had some things happen today, and so I just want to spend a second and just talk about it. One of my cousin's husband, one of our family members, is a rancher over in eastern New Mexico, and he had a little. They were doing some roping this morning and had a horse spill and got stepped on, and I just got right before we came online. I got a picture of all the things that's going on with him, and he's got I think he's going to be all right, but he's got an entire rib cage of just crushed ribs. I was looking at these pictures, and just right off the top I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7 fractures, just on the back side of the ribs, and then it's got some pictures of the front, and it looks to me like they're just ripped all to heck right there. So, man, that happened at lunchtime. They had to aero carry him over here. The helicopter came and got him and landed in their roping arena over there close to Portales, New Mexico, and brought him over here. I appreciate those guys, those aero care guys that take care of people like that. I appreciate them being available and getting him over here and taking care of him so good. The family got over here, and then I heard about it. We got over there at lunchtime, spent about an hour just sitting in the emergency room with him, with the family, and then my cousin just sent me some pictures just right before we got on. So still waiting to hear about any organ damage or anything that goes on, but I feel bad about that for him. I'm glad I think he's going to make it. But it's kind of a rough little situation. And then of course everybody here in West Texas, and especially in this office at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, we're just sick about what's going on in Ruidoso, New Mexico. We're so sad for those people. We're really concerned for our friends and family and all the people that have lost their livelihood in the fire that's going on over there. I still haven't heard about Dr. Fraley and his office. I know Dr. Fraley's safe and his family is safe, and that's the main thing. But we still his office was right in the path of the fire, right in the very beginning, and so he hasn't been able to get over there. As far as I have been told, he hasn't been able to get back over there and see what's going on in his with his office. And so, it's disheartening, and you just kind of you got to refocus your day a little bit when things happen to people that you love, and so it sets your priorities. It sets your priorities up, and that's really, that's really the thing about healthcare. About when you're trying to talk about healthcare with people and you're trying to help them live healthy, it makes no difference. It really doesn't. It makes no difference until it makes a difference, and then it makes all the difference in the world. You know what I mean? It's like being the best that you can be doesn't make any difference until it just, like I was thinking about, I sent Joe a text and I was like, dude, let me know how I can help you. And then I started thinking about how can I actually help him? Can I rebuild his practice for him? Can I get him back on his feet? Can I get him someplace to stay? What are the resources that I have to take care of him? And I know I'm not responsible for taking care of everybody, but it does make me think, okay, like if I was the best that I could be, and I really did prioritize what I was up to, and I really did focus on the things that were important in life, like what kind of resources could I supply for someone? What could we do in a situation like this when we've got an entire town that has like the likelihood right now that the whole thing could burn to the ground. I mean, I heard today Robert Pratt just said it on the radio right before I came on, and I saw the same report. There's like 1,400 structures or something that have burned down, and um, it's just like it's going to take a group. It's going to take a group effort. It's going to take all of us, and the the priority of health. You got it was kind of funny. They were talking about it in the emergency room today about how they had a rope. I mean, a branding tomorrow. They were supposed to do a branding tomorrow, and in the I don't know if in the helicopter or after they got over here and got him over into the emergency room, his son, who's my cousin's son, so I don't know what that means to me. I call him my cousin, and that, but he was telling him he'd already called all the guys and told them, "Hey, we called the branding off tomorrow." And he said, his dad said, "No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't call the branding off. You guys need to get that done." And it was like, hold up. You're the one in the hospital bed. You don't get to make the decisions right now. Like, we're not trusting you. You are in a healing state, but it just changes your perspective on things, right? And sometimes I think we get so caught up, and we get so we just have so many things that we want to get done in a day, and we have so many things on our schedule that sometimes we just forget about the really truly important things in life. And then all of a sudden, what you thought was important is not so important to all of a sudden, because now someone's health is actually challenged, and someone is really really needing some care, right? And this is an acute trauma. This isn't a chronic disease, but we just it is easy to get anxiety. I had the conversation. I don't know how many people I saw today, but I had the conversation within probably every single hour of the day today, starting from 7:30 this morning. So however many hours that is, 11 hours, I probably had the conversation multiple times within the hour, 11 times, about what was going on the mountain. And even in the emergency room, we were talking about it because all those people are from Eastern New Mexico, and they've got ties to Ruidoso and Alto and all that sort of thing. And and then I had a kid come in this afternoon that talked to his mom brought him in. He's a high school kid, and he's talking about anxiety. Maybe he's a junior high kid. He's talking about anxiety, and it just reminded me of the two different ways that I understand anxiety to be. And one of those ways is when your external world falls apart. Now, that's what there's a recent video of Dr. Peterson talking about anxiety. He's a clinical psychologist, and so he's dealt with anxiety for 20, 30 years or whatever. He's qualified to talk about anxiety, and he's actually quite good at it. And so anxiety can be brought on from an external, the world around you falls apart. That's one way that it can, and that's the maps of meaning. That's really what the maps of meaning means. It's the map of how we get meaning in life, and what goes wrong when that map gets disrupted. And that's the way Dr. Peterson tries to describe the right hemisphere of the brain, whereas we learn it a little bit different from Dr. McGilchrist when we talk about looking for the threat in the right hemisphere of the brain. But what Dr. Peterson describes the right hemisphere of the brain as when the external environment doesn't match the internal environment, that those two things are create a stress response. When the definition of how you think things are supposed to be gets disrupted in a major way, that can create a sympathetic response. And I'm just gonna draw that a little bit, because I think it'll help me say it better. for all you guys that are out there. And um, let me see how I might could draw this. Hang on, I got some new stuff going on. Some new ways that we can present some of this stuff. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that one for a little bit. So this will help. And it's one of the ways you can get your thoughts out. And so working through it. And I always it helps me to kind of walk through the right side and the left side of the brain and understand and what we're dealing with, because we all have seen this drawing 1,000 times now, and this up and to the right and over to the left process. But the up and to the right process is looking for the unknown, and the unknown has a threat. This is the threat. Now, the way that Dr. Peterson describes that is not so much that it's completely unknown, that we don't have an internal definition of it, but that we have something that basically maybe threatens the internal definition. We have a definition of how we think things are supposed to be, and then our external world doesn't match what our definition is, and that is uneasy for us. It's uneasy. It sets us off a little bit, which in turn kicks in the stress response. So we can take the situation with my cousin's husband, and I'm just going to call him my cousin. We could take the situation in that scenario where all of a sudden your definition of your world, the way that you expect it to be, you can put it in the time frame of my cousin, or the time frame of my cousin's children, or whatever. My cousin's son was actually roping with him, and he saw the whole thing happen, and he helped him try to get him up off the ground and all that sort of thing. And he saw his reaction to what happened. And so that's all of a sudden, what does that do? That's the external environment is not in congruency with the internal expectation of what the external environment is supposed to be. Dad's hurt. All of a sudden, dad's hurt. Like that. What am I supposed to do with that situation? That is a challenge to the right hemisphere of the brain. That sets us off in a way that makes us not really understand. It's like, whoa, hold on a second. My definition of what the world is supposed to be like has now been altered, and it's unknown. And they're both saying the same thing. Dr. McGilchrist says the same thing, just in a somewhat different way. But either one of those situations is going to kick us into looking for a threat, and that's going to create anxiety, and that's going to create hyperactivity of that right hemisphere. That's going to put us into that mode where we're just going to become. We're going to have all of the sympathetic stress that goes along with that. That is going to fire down to the adrenal gland. That is going to set off the whole. That's going to set off the cortisol. That's going to release the adrenaline in the right hemisphere through the locus coeruleus. That's going to increase heart rate. That's going to increase blood pressure. That's going to decrease all organ function, testosterone, digestion, immune system. That entire pathway is just like, whoa, all of a sudden. Because why would you need those things, right? What difference would it make? What difference does it make in the moment that all of a sudden your world flips upside down or is all destroyed in that you would? What difference does it make if you have an immune system? It doesn't. It really does. As far as your brain's concerned, it doesn't. What difference does it make if it digests food? It's just like, hey, can I get you guys anything to eat? And the answer is no, I don't feel like eating anything. Like my stomach is in a knot. Why is my stomach in a knot? Well, my stomach's in a knot because my entire external environment is now incongruent with my internal definition, which now shuts down my digestion. My digestion is unimportant at this moment. And we can take these situations because we understand them. Like I had a girl come in today. Her mom lives in Ruidoso, and she's like, she's out of town. She's in California, but her mom. It's like she's afraid that her mother her entire house is going to burn down, and that's creating anxiety in her, and that's creating this physiological response. That stress response happens, and then it creates this physiological response. And if you're dealing with this physiological response today, like if you're dealing with it in a very acute phase, like all of a sudden you've got a loved one that you're dealing with, then if you're dealing with it today, you're probably not going to pay any attention to what I'm saying. If you're dealing with it today, none of this stuff is important. But if you're not dealing with it today, then maybe something in the future, it might be helpful to understand the mechanism, in the future. It might be helpful for us to understand. Okay, I see what he's saying now. Like that, I get that. Because we're saying the same thing in both scenarios. We've got the acute phase, the very traumatic, the trauma that took place today, that puts us in the unknown, and then the questions are what's happening, what's going to happen, when's he going to get well, is he going to survive, is there something wrong with his heart, did he hurt his liver, is there something going on with the lung, he did have a collapsed lung, what are the scenarios, what's taking place, and then you start to go through all of those things, like what the those are immediate needs for the person in need. Okay. But now let's go and look at the fire situation. We don't necessarily have life-threatening situations that we're dealing with. We're having life-altering situations that we're dealing with, but most of the people that we know have had the opportunity to get away from the fire. They're at least evacuated, and at least their lives are safe, but their livelihood may not be safe. Their lively possessions may not be safe. They may be in a complete, like, there's a bunch of unknowns, right? And those unknowns are creating that same stress response. And then I guess the lesson that we could take from this is there's lots of lessons, right? Number one, those of us that are Christians understand that we have a Lord and Savior, and there is our provision, and there is our resource, and that as long as that is where our eyes are, and that's where our heart is, we're fine, right? We're fine. Either way, we're fine. So we know that, and that helps us. And how do we know that? Well, it gets us out of our unknown brain, and it puts us into our known brain, and that's our belief system is part of our belief system is part of our mechanism that we use to cope with those things, that gets us in a state of hope that we can move to tomorrow. That's what part of our belief system is. That it is the way that we get through these times. But we know that. But we also can kind of take this situation. What I try to do is use these as a teaching moment and take these situations and just say, okay, then how do we take this piece of information and apply it to our everyday lives in long-term scenarios that help us live a healthier life over a long period of time? Because it's the same mechanism. The same mechanism that kicks in whenever we have these particular things happen is the same mechanism that kicks in when we drink a Dr. Pepper. And I know that you're thinking, Jason, shut up, dude. Like, that's so ridiculous. No, I'm not saying the severity is the same. I'm saying the mechanism is the same. To the brain, the Dr. Pepper is an unknown. It's a toxin. It's high fructose corn syrup. It's too much phosphorus. It's carbonated water. It's like the brain is saying to itself, why are you drinking carbonated water? Like, where on earth is there carbonated water? And so to the brain is like, why? How did we make carbonated water? We took carbon, took the carbon dioxide that came off of oil wells, and we jammed it into water. We sell the carbon dioxide off of oil wells, and then we take the carbon dioxide that's trapped underneath the earth, not in water. It's trapped underneath the earth, and we capture the carbon dioxide and we sell it to Coca-Cola, and then Coca-Cola smashes it into water, and then we drink it. And that is threatening to the right hemisphere of our brain. That's threatening to our brain, period. It's threatening to our body. So it creates this mechanism of right side unknown activity inside the body. That mechanism can happen if your husband gets thrown off a horse and stepped on. That mechanism can happen if your friend's chiropractic office might be burned to the ground. That mechanism is if your house in Alto got burned down, or your mom's house is about to get burned down, or an entire town is about to get burned down. That mechanism can happen right there. Or if we drink a soda, that mechanism can happen right there. Now, I can't control the getting thrown from a horse scenario, and I can't control the entire town burning down scenario, but I can control the soda pop scenario. That is the one thing that I can control, and it gives me an opportunity to say, okay, the things. What's that old prayer? Like, grant me the wisdom to to change the things that I can change, to I don't know, something to that effect. Like, grant me the wisdom to something. Grant me the serenity to change the things I can. Whatever that is, you guys know what that. You know what that prayer is, and the wisdom to know the difference. Right, that's the end of the way it goes. What things do I have control over, and what things do I not have control over? I can't control the bucking off the horse. I can't control getting stepped on and breaking all your ribs and collapsing your lung. I can't control the hot fire. I can control the soda pop. I can control the amount of sugar that I eat. I can control whether or not I load myself up with high omega-6 fatty acids. I can control whether or not I go for a walk. I can control what time I went to bed. I'll tell you what, last night's show, remember I told you, like, am I going to go home and get some sleep? And I did. I was in bed last night it was like I was in bed at 9:00, maybe even 8:40, and turned my phone off at like 9:20, and I was asleep 9:30, and I had my alarm set this morning for 6, so I had 8.5 hours of sleep, and so I gave myself adequate time last night to sleep. And then, did I have the capacity to do that? I had some moments where I rolled over, and I was thinking, I could have got like 5:00. I probably could have gotten up. My internal clock did that a lot, but the I felt super refreshed this morning. Like, I was on fire. I've been pretty solid all day long, but it was so much difference in the clarity of thought. There was so much difference in the energy that I had this morning. There was so much difference in the passion I brought towards the chiropractic adjustment in the office, because I had gotten a good night's sleep last night. I can control that. I can control whether or not I get to sleep on time or not most of the time, right? Now, there may be scenarios that puts me out of that are outside of my control, but most of the time that I can do that. And when we're talking about health, what we're trying to avoid is number one, acute problems, right? And number two, chronic disease. And there's really, as Dr. Chestnut says, in the Eat Well, Move Well, Think Well, the whole innate wisdom stuff that he talks about, it's like there's no evidence that we should develop chronic disease. There's no evidence that we should. I had a new patient today that told me, he's like, I got an old friend that had to have his knee replaced, and I asked him, "What'd you do to your knee?" And he said, "I just had too many birthdays." And he was like 80 something years old, or maybe he was 80 years old, something like that. And that is those one of those sentences that we talked about that says that it's like everything in moderation. Because the question I had for him was, how was your other knee? And his other knee was just fine. So we got to take a break. Let's take a break. We'll see if we can come back and talk about some more health. I hope you guys enjoyed that first half of the show. That's real stuff right here from me. So that's no sugarcoating it. So that's the real stuff. That's Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and we'll be right back. Hey, if you got any questions for me, if you got any comments, if you got anything that you'd like to talk about, send it to me. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that's going on. And I know that there's a lot of stuff that's going on in everybody's life. It's a daily thing that everybody goes through. And we're all in this thing together. So we might as well talk about it. We might as well talk about it on days like today because that's what's happening. I mean, that is the agenda of the day is let's just survive the day. So let me send a quick question while we're on the break. Um, just needed to let my cousin know that she's got a place to stay tonight if she needs to stay over at my house. I don't know if she'll leave the hospital or not, but they might need a place to stay. So I just wanted to make sure that she knew that. Um, yeah, it's these pictures are quite pictures are quite amazing. The technology that they have is crazy, but I can see man, one, two, three, four, five ribs are broken in two places, broken on the back and on the front. And one rib is broken on the front. Two more ribs are just broken on the back. Yeah, dang, that's his entire left side is just got crushed. Okay, let's get back to it. Give me 1 second. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. And the first part of the show was real life stuff that we've been talking about. If you're just joining the show, had some traumatic things happen in our family today. Had one of our family members get bucked off a horse and stepped on and crushed him. And I'm sitting here looking at all of his ribs right there, just on this picture. It's quite. I don't see any spinal fractures that are obvious, and I don't see any spinal cord damage. They didn't mention that, but those are some horrific looking pictures that are going on. So, but it looks like he's going to make it, and he's just going to be sore for a he's going to be sore for a while. That's not good. That's not good. So we're talking about that. So let's see if we can get focused for this second half of the show. And let's see if we could just talk about some wellness type things. So let me finish the sentence. So the old fella came in and he said to me, but he was telling me this story about the old man that he knew that was having the knee replacement. And he said, yeah, I just had too many birthdays. And I said, did he get both knees replaced, or how's the other knee? And he's like, no, the other knee was fine. And I was like, no, okay. So then we went through the exam with him, and then I did the X-rays and did all the brain stuff with him and everything. And I put his X-rays up on the view box, and it's degenerative from top to bottom. And he was like, too many birthdays, right? And I was like, absolutely not. And what was really interesting is he came in with neck pain, and he said his low back doesn't really bother him at all. But the degeneration in his low back was just as bad as the degeneration in his neck. And that was where I talked about, that's what I was talking about earlier this week, when I can show you 100 x-rays that talks about degeneration versus arthritis. That's what I was talking about in this particular case. The lumbar spine was just as degenerative as the cervical spine, but he didn't have any pain in his lumbar spine. His lumbar spine was functioning properly. His cervical spine was where he's having a hard time with rotation. He couldn't get, when he tried to turn his head, it made his neck sore. Well, it totally made sense to me why, because I mean, the whole thing was not firing properly, and we found some things going on with his brain that wasn't firing properly. And so when he's like, well, are you going to do your thing and this was his first adjustment. He's 72 years old. And this today was the very first time he'd ever come to a chiropractor ever. And I've been taking care of his wife and his daughter and his granddaughter and lots of people in his family. But today was the very first day ever that I got to take care of him. And when he came into the office, hang on, his expectation of what I was going to do was completely off. Like, he's like, so you're gonna do your chiropractic thing, you're gonna do your twisting thing and your crunch me thing? And I said, absolutely not. I said, not a chance that we're going to do any of that. Not with the way that spine is structured, and with the way that those bone spurs are structured, and the way that those things are happening. No, we're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is we are going to try to get your brain to fire a little bit better. What I am going to do is move your eyeballs. I'm going to get your eyes to move a little bit. I'm going to get you to follow a tuning fork in a way that maybe get your eyes to move. And then I'm going to put some vibration on your fingertips. I'm going to put some vibration on your fingertips. I'm going to put some vibration on the joints on this left side of your body. Actually, it was on his right side of his body, because he turned about almost 90 degrees in his step test. So it was this, I need to stimulate the right cerebellum into the left cortex. That's the adjustment. The adjustment is not the pop. That stuff, that especially nowadays with YouTube and all that stuff, that's just sensationalism. That's just something, and it's awesome in a certain way, because everybody loves the pop now. It's like, ooh, man, did you see that? I'm so attracted to the pop and all that sort of thing, which is way better than the first 15 years of my career, where it was like you're killing people and you're the devil. So at least we got over that, seems like, a little bit. But the adjustment is to get the nervous system, get free of interference, to adjust, to eliminate the subluxation. The subluxation comes from physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses. You can see it if you map it. If you stick with me long enough and you just keep listening to what I'm saying right here. This right here, what we just went through in the first half of the show, with the acute trauma of being stepped on by a horse, with the unknowns of an entire town about to burn down, or if you're drinking a soda pop, the common denominator right there is the physical, chemical, the physical. And I ask him, that's what I do on the intake form. I ask him, what is your physical stress? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, how physical has your life been? Are you average physical stresses? Are you great physical stresses? What have you had an asymmetrical physical stress? Do you play the violin or the fiddle? One direction always. Do you play the guitar? One direction always. Are you crochet, a knitter? Right? Do you quilt? Do you make quilts with your head forward and your head down? Are you an accountant or a dentist that sits in a chair and turns their body one direction and then works, or a dental hygienist that works in a awkward twisting motion? Those are physical stresses, and physical stresses are pretty obvious. I mean, it's pretty obvious that for the most part, that sitting at a desk, staring at a computer screen, and the burning. You guys know what that feels like. That burning right there on that knot on the back of your neck that you get from, like, if you're sitting at a computer screen and you're typing and your head is forward and you're looking and it's like, I got this burning right back here. What is the burning? The burning is muscle contraction, pulling. Why is it burning? It's burning because the eyes are down. When the eyes go down, the brain wants the eyes on the horizon. Have you ever wondered why a scoliosis patients don't walk around with their head cocked over like this? Have you ever seen very many people, like, you ever been at the mall or anywhere, like at a school function or a ball game or anywhere like that, and seen a person whose spine is crooked, and them, I can't get far away from this mic, but them walking around with their head completely over sideways? Very, very, very seldom do you do that. That's a extreme case, right? Most of the time, the spine at the top brings itself back to the place where the eyes are on the horizon. That's the story of the little girl whose eye was stuck in and wouldn't fire properly, and they told her that she had torticollis, and she walked around with her head tilted like this. And her mom brought her in the office and said, yeah, she's got torticollis, which means that these muscles on this side of the neck are short. And then I watched her. I watched her as she moved across and she played with the little toys that we had in the waiting room. And I watched her as she moved. And then every once in a while, she brought her head back up straight. And I was like, that's not torticollis. Why would she do that? Why would she bring her head down and walk around with her head sideways? You know why she did it? So she could get her eyes straight. That's what she was trying to do. Her eyes were, when she put her head and her shoulders in a proper posture, in an upright position, her eyeballs were crooked and everything was double. And she was so young, she could not explain that. So what did she do? She tilted her head to get her eyes back on the horizon. That's what she did. Well, that's what physical stress does to us when, like, we're at a computer screen. Our head is going forward, and which means our eyes would go down, but our eyes don't go down. Our head goes forward and our eyes go up. Well, how do our eyes go up? They go up because we contract the muscles on the back of the neck. And that we do that for 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, just typing on a computer. What do we get? We get the burning in the back of the neck. That's a physical stress. That's physical, and everybody gets that, and everybody that's worked on a computer will know that's a physical stress. Okay, physical stress causes interference in the nervous system. Okay, chemical stress is the next one. And what do I mean by that? Because I really don't think I do a very good job of explaining chemical stress. And this guy was in a chemical industry for the last 50 years. He had an unknown amount of chemical stress. And we don't think about it. We don't think about that because we do not think about a vertebral bone and another vertebral bone and the disc that sits between them, and this disc wearing itself out. When that disc wears itself out, you get things like bone spurs that will happen like that. You'll get end plate disruption. You'll get decreased disc height, right there. You'll get almost no space in between there. This whole bone on bone concept, you'll get all that happening. What is the cause of the degeneration? The cause of the degeneration is two parts. It's not one part. It's abnormal movement. It's abnormal movement, but it's also abnormal chemistry. Jason, what do you mean by abnormal chemistry? Abnormal chemistry means that the all of the inflammatory components of the body, anything that the body uses, and there's all kinds of inflammatory components in the body, anything that the body uses for inflammation, which is the initial stage of the stress response, right? One of the very first ones is inflammation. So, what is your body doing when it's creating inflammation? Your body is responding inflammatorily. That's not even a word, but I just said it, inflammatorily to an environment in order to have an immune response. That chemistry changes the the dynamics of the disc, which causes the degenerative disc disease or degenerative joint disease. It's movement and chemistry. Where does chemistry come from? Chemical stress. It comes from chemical stress. What is a chemical stress? A paint thinner, insecticide, pesticide, cleaning materials, inks, glues, partially hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, yellow number 7, red number 4, whatever those things are, those things that make your Cheez-Its look like Cheez-Its, the things that make Skittles purple or yellow or red, those are all chemicals that are incongruent with health. That's what they are. And that chemical stress, like we're catching it now in microplastics in water bottles. We're catching it now that we start to understand it in so many different ways that we have chemicals inside our body that were never supposed to be inside our body. And what do? They cause disruption in our nervous system. And in disruption in our nervous system in chiropractic is called a subluxation. And then the last one is the mental emotional stress. If you think you're going to feel awesome today thinking about that Ruidoso burning down, you're not. If you think you might make you sick, that's a truth. If you think you might lose your appetite or you might lose your sleep or your joint sensation, your sensory system, your sensory system gets heightened, your neck hurts worse. Your low back hurts worse. Your knees hurt worse because you're stressed out. Those are true statements. Those are actually true statements. That remember what we talked about last night with the thalamus, hyperactivity in the thalamus during the stress response increases the sensory system of the body. My knees hurt. My knees hurt worse on the days that I'm stressed out than they hurt on the days that I'm not stressed out. If I don't get any sleep, had this happen today, patient comes in worse than she was last week. She says she's not able to sleep. Her outlook is bad. She's disgusted with what's going on. She doesn't know who she should turn to. All those things are 100% true, right? She's really upset about what's going on and how she's doing, and she doesn't know what to do about it. And then she told me I got about 4 hours of sleep last night. Because she didn't get enough sleep, she has hyperactivity of the thalamus, which means she has hyperactivity of the sensory system, the input system, the system going from the brain into the body, going through the thalamus. This pathway that I draw, this is not a neurological pathway. I'm not drawing specific nerve pathways. What I'm drawing is global, big picture activity. Take all of the sensory system, take the 3 trillion bits of information per second that is firing into the nervous system, sum total the whole thing up. And what you're going to see is it's firing the right hemisphere. Whoa. It's firing the right hemisphere first in the sum total of the whole thing. That's where the pathway goes, but it goes through the thalamus. That whole thing is it's the mix master of the brain as it fires it over here and down here to both sides, to the amygdala, to the cortex, all of the things that's going on. Is it firing it left too? Yes, it's firing it left at the same time. It's firing it all over. It's firing to the frontal lobe. It's firing to the cerebellum. I mean, that's a piece of artwork right there. If you could see it, I know you guys on the radio can't see it, but um, there's the physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress. And the physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress is the subluxation. The physical, chemical, and the mental emotional stress causes the subluxation. And the subluxation is interference in the nervous system. And interference in the nervous system causes your body to go in a state of dis-ease or disorder. And you will feel, hopefully, eventually, if you have that long enough, you will feel a symptom. And a symptom is the manifestation of interference in the nervous system, and the body is in an environment that's incongruent with health. That's what a symptom is. And that's what the body's trying to do, is it's trying to put the body back into a state of health. And that's chiropractic. That's what we do. And that's what I wanted to do tonight. I wanted to look up some things. I wanted to actually do some studying. And but I think I'll read just a little bit, because what can I do? Because I do, sometimes the old coach in me comes out, and I spend too much time focusing on the negative instead of focusing on the positive. But so I thought I would just share some of this stuff. And it was funny because last week we talked about the end of Alzheimer's with Dr. Dale Bredesen. Last night we read from Dr. Walker's book on why we sleep. And one of the things it talked about in the why we sleep was dementia, right? And dementia, Alzheimer's, brain function, all that sort of thing. Well, now I can grab another book. This is our Spark book we go to. Why is it? It's just a great exercise book. If we want to talk about exercise, we can use Spark. It's a great book. But dementia is a loss of function that dramatically undermines our ability to get through daily life. It happens when a particular area of the brain is impaired or shuts down. Not unlike when a fuse gets blown in a home circuit breaker, the kitchen appliances may work fine, but the lights in the bedroom have gone dark. Yeah, so we understand dementia. Like, at least we understand the concept of dementia, right? So the biggest risk factor for dementia is the set of genes we're born with. There are a number of genes related to Alzheimer's, such as the ApoE4 variation. If you've never heard of it, it's an important thing if you're interested in Alzheimer's. If you have multiple variations, the ApoE4 variation, for instance, is present in approximately 40% of Alzheimer's patients, but 30% of the general population unafflicted by the disease carries it too. And there are plenty of Alzheimer's patients who do not have the ApoE4 variation. So there is a genetic component, but there's also an epigenetic component to the whole thing. And the epigenetic component, the brains of animals allowed to run on wheels showed better plasticity and more connection in the basal ganglia, suggesting that they had adapted by building up circuits to compensate for the dopamine decline. So, and I didn't read that whole area of dopamine decline, but it was talking about Parkinson's disease. This doctor from somewhere, I don't mean to be flippant with it, but Dr. Madison or whoever found that the same sort of result in rats that had their dopamine neurons knocked out to mimic the biology of Parkinson's. So, and that's what he's talking about. And then he said the brains of animals allowed to run on wheels showed better plasticity and more connections in the basal ganglia, suggesting that they had adapted by building up circuits to compensate for the dopamine decline. Okay. The dopamine decline is left hemisphere. Big picture, it's left hemisphere. So, right, left. Right side is adrenaline, left side is dopamine. Firing pattern into the right hemisphere increases adrenaline. That's the locus coeruleus. That's the whole amygdala locus coeruleus. That's the split to the amygdala firing the locus coeruleus, the locus coeruleus flooding the brain with adrenaline. There's your increased amount of adrenaline. The key component right there is this crossover. That crossover right there is what stimulates the dopamine. That's the stimulant. That's the internal stimulant. That's the internal governor of the dopamine. Okay, the internal governor. The governor on a vehicle. You can't drive more than 55 miles an hour down the highway, right? If we've got the overactivity in the right hemisphere, we're getting an overactivity of adrenaline. Adrenaline and dopamine fire the motor cortex. Go back and listen to Huberman talk when he's talking about David Goggins. Go back and listen to that concept of frontal lobe. We've got frontal lobe activity, motor cortex in the frontal lobe, sensory cortex in that right next to it, in that parietal lobe. Okay, go back and listen to this. Here's what you get when you exercise and you can't do another set. When your adrenaline, when your adrenaline gets over your dopamine, this is down, this is up. When your adrenaline gets too high over your dopamine, it shuts down your motor cortex, meaning you don't want to do another rep. You're out of juice. Okay. In the Parkinson's episode, the dopamine is being disrupted. We're getting a decreased amount of dopamine in the Parkinson's. That's what it's talking about right here. We've got mice that have Madison found that the same sort results in rats that had their dopamine neurons knocked out to mimic the biology of Parkinson's. The brains of animals allowed to run on wheels showed better plasticity and more connections in the basal ganglia, suggesting that they had adapted by building up circuits to compensate for the dopamine decline. There's a function in there that basically helps that pathway. And what is it? What is the function of helping that right side to left side pathway? It's running. But really, it's not the running so much as it's getting on the feet. It can be walking. It's the firing pattern of the feet to the brain, to the right side, to the left side, that helps us compensate for that stress response that we have. When we're stressed, we need to move our feet. When we're stressed, we got to watch the nutrition that we have. We've got to make sure that we're not going to blow our nutrition. We need to get our sleep. We need to understand the mechanisms. We need to understand the threats. We need to make sure that we can move our feet, drink a little extra water, make sure we have a handful of calories, because our brain's going to use a lot of calories when we're stressed out. Those are the things that we can do. Hey, thanks for tonight. Thanks for letting me kind of share that information with you. That, how this show goes. I just bring it to you how I see it for the day. And that's kind of the things that we got. And I got a text just now. Luckily, no organ damage. We just got broken ribs. We'll make it. It'll be painful. We got a collapsed lung and some broken ribs, but he's going to be all right. And I hope all those people in Ruidoso are going to be all right too. Thank you guys for the evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow night at 6. Thanks for watching.